All right, we're going to kick things off this morning just in the interest of time, but I expect a few more people will be joining us throughout the introduction this morning. But good morning, everyone. My name is Molly McCaig, and I'm the Operations and Membership Manager at the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, or MNN as we like to call it. I just want to thank you all for joining us this morning for our Pathways to Access Digital Equity panel. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items this morning before we dig into all of today's content. The recording of today's program will be emailed to you following the webinar along with a survey, so please keep an eye out for that in your email. And additionally, if you have any technical difficulties during today's workshop, please feel free to submit them to any of the MNN staff here in the chat. That would be myself, Jessica Holmes, or Claire Ladd. At any time, we'll be there if you have any technical difficulties. And if you do have any questions about the content of today's program, please feel free to also submit those in the chat. We'll be taking them as we go, but we will also open up at the end for any questions that anyone may have. But with that, I'll hand it over to our moderator, Yi-Chin Chin, to kick things off. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you so much, Molly. Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Yi-Chin Chen, and I'm actually a proud board member of the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network and your moderator for today. Today's summit on digital equity is a really important discussion, as many of us who work on the front line can attest to. It's a barrier that disproportionately impacts those who already face many other systemic barriers. Within the hour that we'll spend together, we'll explore why digital equity needs to be the priority of the new normal, provide you with some information on the Affordable Connectivity Program, the ACP. You'll hear a ton about that today, and offer you tools of how you can best support those that your mission is designed to serve, so that they can get connected and stay connected. While we know and confident that you will find today's discussion very helpful and informative, it's important to acknowledge that the issue of digital exclusion, connectivity, adoption barriers are actually all symptoms of much larger systemic inequities that historically exclude those from disfranchised communities. The future of full digital inclusion will require commitment and participation on all levels, including our policymakers. And today's summit is an important step to keep the momentum of change going. So I'm excited to get started. I'm joined by a super powerful digital equity warriors and leaders as our panelists today. I'd love to just kind of introduce them. Our panel would include Dan Noyes, co-CEO of Tech Goes Home, John Fitterer, Director of Operations of the MACDC, Virginia Benzan, Director of Racial Justice Advocacy at the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute, and Becca Fracassa, who is the Director of Community Impact at Comcast. We'll wrap up the summit at promptly at 11 a.m., so let's jump right in. My first question is actually to Dan. Dan, Tech Goes Home, this is what Tech Goes Home is, right? Fighting the digital inequity. Can you tell us a little bit about just what is it that you all do, but then also what are you seeing over at Tech Goes Home regarding digital exclusion, and how is it a racial justice issue?
Thank you. First, let me thank everyone for being here. I want to thank MNN for doing this. It's not every day I get called a warrior. I kind of like that. So I might change my business card to say warrior on it. I think I could go around being very proud of that. So Tech Goes Home is a 20-plus-year-old digital inclusion, digital equity nonprofit whose mission is to empower communities to access and use digital tools to overcome barriers and advance lives. It's a very fancy way of saying we basically provide a brand new computer, internet access, and digital life skills training to those without. So kids can do homework, adults can find jobs, seniors can connect with loved ones, and everyone can access things like finances and telemedicine. We've been doing this now, like I said, for about 20 years. We are in 20 cities across Massachusetts. We'll soon be in 24. We're really proud of that. I love how you set this up, where the digital equity or digital exclusion is a symptom of a much larger problem, because that's exactly what we see all the time. The data completely backs that up when you start looking at who has access and who doesn't, or who has the skills and who doesn't. When you look at whether it be telemedicine, whether it be education, internet at home, whether it be job skills, across the board, you see there is a massive racial gap between who has access and who doesn't. So in terms of, who we serve, 100% of the people we serve are low income. 60% are what HUD classifies as extreme low income. Basically, that means you're making less than $20,000 a year as a household. I'm not sure how you survive these days making less than 20,000 as a household, but people do. 85% of the people we serve are people of color. About half of the people we serve are English as a second language, have English as a second language. About 10% are over the age of 65. So we run the gamut. We've got from 3-year-old to 96-year-olds, but one of the consistent themes we see is that the digital divide is a nefarious symptom of the larger racial equity and economic equity issues that we have in our country.
Well, and I'm sure that you can provide, if anyone is interested in digging into more of the data, just reach out to Dan. I'm sure Tech Folks Home has a bunch of those. And, I can't help but think about, not only is this just a racial justice issue, but it's also a barrier to the kind of future that we all want, right? The future of innovation. And you're locking out a high percentage of population that aren't able to contribute their creativity and build this community that we all want to be in. And that's really a huge loss. And I think speaking up, I'm gonna jump over actually to John. John, you work with MACDC. And for those of you who don't know, CDCs are, our really bedrocks of communities and building affordable housing. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, what are the vital needs of affordable connectivity, especially with the members that you work with, all the CDCs across Massachusetts, and what does that adoption process really actually look like? Oh, we can't hear you, John, unfortunately. I think either you're muted or...
There's always someone in every meeting. There's always someone who forgets.
I have to say that my apologies. You would think that after 3 years of doing this, I would remember to take my.
No.
So thanks, everyone. No, and it's a pleasure to be here to talk about this issue. The CDCs that we represent, there's we have over 64 state certified CDCs that we represent in the Commonwealth. And many of them, when it comes to interconnectivity, are facing very much the same issues. And to build off of what Dan said, one of the big challenges is that you've got to think about when you're building a new series of residences within a community. It would be weird to think about putting a home together and not including electricity or running water, right? Or other services that we consider fundamental to the overall utility package of a residence. Well, high-speed internet needs to be there front and center, and that has to be a part of the overall costs that are put into the actual development. And then we need to think about the long-term accessibility or the affordability of being able, I know Becca is going to be talking about this, but the ability for those residents to actually acquire and afford to purchase internet at little to no cost. So the needs are astronomical. And as Dan was talking about, it is not only a racial issue, but it is an overall socio-political, almost class distinction in some cases, where, many of us that are on the call today, for example, take for granted the ability and the accessibility to use and profit from accessibility to the internet. I have a smartphone, I have a smartwatch, I have at least one computer plus an iPad, and it's just ubiquitous. And my son has access to those services as well. And so he had the privilege of having those services available during the pandemic. But there were many of his peers throughout the Commonwealth that did not, benefit from that. And it creates significant disadvantages for those families and youth that aren't able to participate and just have the ubiquity of access to the internet. If you don't mind, I think that there's a couple of examples that might be worth highlighting as to where, Becca's going to be talking obviously significantly about one solution that is hopefully going to help erase these divides. But, within our field, we're noticing here in Boston, Urban Edge along the Columbus Avenue corridor is striving to put in high-speed Wi-Fi with free access to help address some of those challenges. It's a pilot program that they're hoping to learn from that'll go up into Eggleston Square so that it ideally would have a strong enough signal so that high-speed internet would be accessible within residences. There's going to be some technological challenges that will need to be addressed to have good, reliable, high-speed internet in that manner. There's a CDC down in Rhode Island called One Neighborhood Builders that actually put very high-speed these antennas with signal relays within a very select community that's got about 6,000 residences that they actually are managing with a high-speed internet partner services such as this. It's a new thing, really. There's not that many that we know of that are actually now building the technology, not just into the building envelope, but actually onto the tops of these buildings so that the entire community can benefit from high-speed Wi-Fi and helping to address some of these issues. There's still yet another challenge, which is the rural communities. And we have, very often I can get caught up in this, I'm sure other people can too. I live in the greater Boston community. So, there's a high concentration of people. It's certainly not rural, but we have members that work out in the hill towns, for example, Dalton and Chesterfield and things like that. And there's a very different set of challenges in those communities, which is actually getting the fiber optic or copper, laid down. In one case, I remember Hilltown CDC only recently in the past couple of years was able to go off of DSL for their office. So, it's kind of interesting, imagine thinking about a business nowadays running, operating on DSL. So there are challenges. And then of course you have the many thousands of residents that live out there. So I hope I've addressed some of those issues, with regard to sort of looking at what the current state is and underlining the vital need of connectivity. And I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I think you just highlighted again this idea that it's not just about getting Chromebooks and internet and cable boxes and connectivity into people's homes, right? It's also about infrastructure. It's about building the right structures that can actually support the advance of technology over the next 20 years as well, while also then retrofitting the buildings that are more than 200 years old, some of them in the area. And, I'm really curious before we go into really the conversations about ACP, this particular program, which is really about, affordability. I'd love to actually ask Dan a quick question of, similarly to John's, examples, are you seeing any innovative practices at Tech Goes Home of folks trying to really bypass some of these really large systemic barriers and getting folks connected? And what are some of those, examples, bright spots, as I like to call them? But then also more importantly, what are some of the advocacy efforts that you're seeing right now that really addresses some of the rooted issues of infrastructure in communities that have just been, hit the most?
Yeah, and let me start by saying I love how John presented it. This isn't an urban versus rural problem. This is an urban and rural problem. They're very different, and it go across the country, and it's a different argument, or it's a different conversation in Wyoming than it is obviously here. And in Massachusetts, more than 90% of people who are unconnected live in urban areas. But if you look at some of the small towns, you have very high percentages of people that aren't connected. It's just that the total number of people living in those communities is much smaller than, say, a Lawrence or a Springfield or a Worcester or a Boston. I think that the key for all of this, and this is going to be one of those things that just is like duh obvious, is to show success. You have to go to where people are. You have to go to where they're at, both geographically, but also skill-wise and knowledge-wise and culturally. And you need to meet people where they are. So in terms of what works for us, we provide a number of options for internet access, and those options are based on feedback from our learners and our instructors. They tell us like, hey, this is a good thing, this isn't. So many of our learners choose just to take a hotspot now from us, and the hotspot isn't as good as, you know, the service you can get from Comcast. It's not as consistent, it's not as fast. But for a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons, that is what's best for them. And so I think anytime we have conversations about how do we tackle a problem, it shouldn't be, and I don't know everyone here, obviously, but it shouldn't be us making those decisions. It should be us going into the communities and asking people what their goals are and what the solutions are, and then us finding the resources to support that. In terms of the advocacy efforts, I think, in fact, I was just in DC doing exactly this work. I think a lot of this is going to have to stem around kind of what John was saying as well, that I think a lot of people in DC and other places are really proud of what's happened so far, and rightfully so. I think some of them think it's over. That, you know, like the ACP's here and that's going to solve every problem. And to the point of, you can't just give someone a computer and internet and be done. It's just like, well, if you gave someone a book, but they don't know how to read, what good is the book? So I think, you know, in terms of advocacy efforts, we really need to dive into things like skills development, and whether it be for workforce or for education or healthcare or whatever it might be. I think that is a real big piece of this. And I think it starts at the local level and it goes all the way up. So like in terms of advocacy, one piece of advice, just, you know, unsolicited advice here, is that you got to build relationships. Like no one here can do it on their own. Like I'm really proud of what Tech Goes Home does, but we are this big and the problem is this big. So if we get enough of us together, all of us, I think that's what we can do. So I hope that answered your question.
Dan, I'd like to build off of that. I'm sorry, but Dan, you made a really good point, which is, yeah, we're talking about, and I made some comments about this, is thinking of it as a utility, right? You know, like it would be, you would find it criminal, and it would be criminal to have a residence that you would put up for rent that, you know, doesn't have hot water or something like that in all likelihood, right? And so, yes, high-speed internet connectivity, reliability in a residence is fundamental. But to Dan's point, that is just part of the problem. You know, there's this overwhelming educational gap as well. And there's, I mean, I've been very privileged to be a part of a learning community around technology, and have been for some decades, since college, or high school. But I mean, many people don't have that opportunity, and it does set them up for less benefits than career growth and prospects. So yeah, this is a significant conversation with many different components to it. So
if I could add too, very quickly to that, just very quickly, the utility piece it's a really interesting question. But again, like, is that what the communities that we serve want? Like, I think we go to it as like a solution, because when you think about water and you think about electricity and you think about those things, it makes sense. Like, you know, everyone should have the same level of clean water. And I would argue everyone should have the same level of internet access. I parallels, but that's based on just my experience. Like if I go into the neighborhoods of Chelsea, is that what the people living in Chelsea want? And those are some of the investigations that we should do. We shouldn't just assume any of this. We should really dive into the communities and see what people really want.
Yeah, I think these are, again, this is a much larger conversation. And, you know, I think one of the things that both of you have alluded to is there have been really significant progress made, but a lot of that is because folks are on the ground are leading the way, right? And today, actually, we have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about this program called the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, and how it's really trying to fill the small, a very, very small gap in a very, very large hole. And today I'm excited to actually invite Virginia to share a little bit about the ACP benefit and share with us and go into more detail of what those benefits are, but also the narrow confines of it and how it may not be the entire answer, right? So I think this is, let's punt it over to Virginia.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me, including me. I am the Director of Racial Justice Advocacy at the Mass Law Reform Institute. And so for those who aren't familiar with Mass Law Reform, we are an anti-poverty policy center and the support center for civil legal aid in Massachusetts. So you may be wondering sort of what that has to do with digital equity. And I think I did not understand the internet before I got into this. So if you were like me and had no idea what sort of broadband meant, high speed meant, I was that person as well. But what I did see is that not having access to the internet, like everybody has said, was impacting people, especially low income people, from not just employment opportunities, but just accessing unemployment. Everything now had been turned over, whether you need to get your driver's license, whether you need to make an appointment with your doctor, go to school, everything was turning online. If you had to go to court, you had to do things online. And so we were seeing really the impact or highlighting the impact. So I'm going to sort of share my screen and get into the kind of nitty-gritty about the program. But we do believe it is a civil rights issue, like everybody has said today. And I think we don't want to use passive language and say that, we just didn't have opportunities or there's access. Like, these were intentional, sort of the same kind of redlining we saw for housing and mortgage loans is the same type of redlining we're seeing about where the infrastructure was put in place to have a high speed or fiber networks. And so, there's this infrastructure piece, but that's intentional. I mean, I agree with Dan that we need to ask folks what they want, but, people in high income areas were not asked, they were just wired with high speed access, right? So they weren't asked, they were just provided that benefit because they understood the need and the accessibility. And so, I think it's important, there should be we should be also wondering why we're not providing the same type of accessibility to everyone. And so that is why at the same time, we were thinking about this as a racial justice issue. The federal government was coming out with a program to address one piece, which is affordability. We know that that's a barrier, but it's not the sole barrier for why, Latinos and Black families are not accessing and being connected to high-speed internet. So we've been promoting access to the affordable connectivity program, and I'll explain sort of how that works. I'm going to go through it very quickly, and I'm offering myself, if you want to, if in your certain agencies, for me to present sort of more fully on this program, happy to do that, happy to walk you through all of the steps. So please, I'll give you my contact information. And so the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, is a new national benefits program. It's one of rare times that we've had a new benefit program with the federal government. It provides a monthly discount on your internet bills and then a one-time discount for certain devices. It's paid directly to the internet company, and it can help you get internet through your home, like a fixed, which we highly recommend, or mobile through your phone. So many of you maybe, or hope, have heard about the emergency broadband benefit that was through sort of the COVID relief funding. It ended on January 1st, ended on December 31st of last year, and it was replaced by the Affordable Connectivity Program. So I can, this is the big difference was that it was a reduction from the $50 to $30 and its funding. EBB was funded through COVID relief, like I said, and this ACP is being funded through the infrastructure bill. So it's been authorized for 5 years. EBB only had $2 billion in it. ACP has $14 billion allocated for it. So like I said, it's a $30 monthly discount on broadband or internet service and any related equipment rentals with that. It's up to $75 if you're living on an eligible tribal land. And it can give you a one-time discount of up to $100 for a laptop, tablet, or a desktop. I just want to make sure, can you see the whole thing or should I move me? Is there a black spot?
Nope, you're all set.
Okay, great. So what was covered by ACP, like I said, it's for your connection to the internet. And so if you are getting bundled service, like getting your internet, your cable, and your phone through a provider, it's only going to cover the piece that connects you to the internet, that you're being charged for the internet. So it's not going to cover your TV service or your cable. And it will cover any equipment rental costs. So if you're renting your router or a modem or a hotspot device, it will also cover that. So if you want to upgrade, so it's available for existing customers, so you just want to talk to your provider. In Massachusetts, we have over 45 providers who are offering, so you have to have agreed with the federal government to participate in the program. We have links to let you know where to go to find those, but there's 45 providers, and they do a mix of mobile, fixed, and devices. So some companies offer both mobile and fixed and devices. Some just offer it through mobile, some just offer through fixed, and some but they in some places and many places don't offer devices, and you have to get the device discount from the same place you're getting your mobile or fixed discount. On May 9th, Biden administration announced a voluntary commitment of 20 internet companies, saying that if you were on ACP, you would have no out-of-pocket costs and no data caps. And so these are the 20 companies. That turns out to about 6 companies in Massachusetts. So these are the 6 companies that somebody who gets ACP will have to pay no out-of-pocket costs for their internet and have no data caps. And so we have a breakdown of sort of what that looks like for each company and what their service. So you can see you really want to be a smart, savvy consumer where possible, because some places only have one provider. And so that's also about competition. And so some things where we're talking about equity, that's another area that we should address. But you can see different companies are offering different things at high speed. It had to be the commitment with Obama had to be at a minimum of 100 megabytes per download. And if you were like me, I had no idea what that meant or what that means, but that means that, there are multiple people can be streaming live. I could be on the Zoom call, my kids could be going on live stream or downloading or playing some video games at the same time, and you shouldn't see any interruptions. Right now, it's 25 is considered high speed, but that's a pretty old notion. So I'm going to get into who is eligible for ACP, and obviously I can answer many questions afterwards, but there's 2 buckets of people who are eligible. You're either eligible because your income, which is 200% below the poverty level, and these are the federal poverty level. So if you're a family of 2, you're making, if you have to make less than $36,620. So 200% of the federal poverty level is a little higher than most benefit programs. And then the second is if you're eligible, if you already are participating in a federal benefits program, such as SNAP or food stamps or Medicaid, that's in Mass Health here, or if your child is going to a school that provides free or reduced school lunch, or if you are receiving WIC and if you're a new, that's the supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children, or if you have a college student who's receiving a Pell Grant. There are no all immigration statuses are eligible for this program. There's no negative impact on immigration. And you can get it if any of a member of your household participates in that program, or if your household income is within that threshold of 200%. And that's defined as any individual group who are sort of sharing income and expenses. So if you're renting a room in a house, but you're not sharing any income, then everybody who's renting the room can get their own ACP benefit individually. If you're sharing income, so you have a bunch of college students and they're all pooling their money in together to pay the rent, then you can only get that for one person in that household. So getting ACP, it's basically a two-step process. First, you have to apply for ACP, and then you enroll with a provider. So applying for ACP, there's 3 ways to do it. You can apply online, which is ironic because you're applying to get connected. You can apply by mail, or you can apply and enroll with a provider. We highly strongly recommend applying online, and that's through the federal government. It's called an agency called USAC, which they contract with, and you can go through ACP benefit. It's online. It can take you, if you're savvy and where everything's working, it could take you less than 10 minutes. Some people encounter some issues, so it can take a lot longer, but usually it's about 10 to 15 minutes to fill out an online application. If you've heard of the Lifeline program, it is, they used to call it the Obama phone program. If you are participating in that program, you're automatically eligible for ACP, and you just need to opt into that. I'm going to quickly, you apply online through the National Eligibility Verifier, and that is a central application for ACP and Lifeline. And you need some supporting documents. So if you have a social security number, you do not need any documents to prove your identity. If you do not have a social security number, then you can use other means to prove your identity, like a driver's license or other government issued documents. You only need to prove your proof of address and household if you're doing the paper application. You don't need to do that online. And then if you are using income as your eligibility base, then you want to use, you need to show income documentation of your income. If you're doing it through the benefits program, you either need something to show that you're receiving that benefit within the last 12 months. If you are in a federal program like Medicaid, like WIC, like federal public housing, SNAP or WIC, they can automatically verify your eligibility. And so we highlight that if you're in any of these programs, these are the things that you should seek to use as your qualifying program, because you won't have to do any more heavy lifting to prove your eligibility. So one big thing is to make sure that your name and address matches exactly with your proof of eligibility. So for instance, if my legal name is Virginia Benzan Espinal, but I just use Virginia Benzan for ease in the United States, I am not going to be able to be automatically matched because my name does not appear in all of my documents. So make sure that if Virginia Benzan Espinal is how I'm receiving my food stamp benefits, and that is exactly the name that I'm putting into apply for this program. And it's also the same name you use for your internet provider. So if I am, for instance, a Comcast customer, my bill should come under the name Virginia Benzan Espinal, and it needs to be consistent all through to ensure that you can be automatically matched. The other point is, I am going to stress again, going through USAC, just because you can get a decision right away if you're doing it through working hours. If you get any issues with it, we can also help with troubleshooting, which we can't do if you go, for instance, to the provider. I provide a step-by-step guide about how to do it. I'm not going to do that today with you guys, but if you need that, I'm happy to provide that. There's also lots of support through ACP, through the federal government. They have phone line that offers assistance from 9 to 9, and they have up to nearly 200 languages to provide assistance in. There's also an email address as well. You should hear pretty immediately if you're approved, if you applied online. If you do not hear within 2 business days, you need to follow up. There is an issue. Feel free to reach out to me or to other folks, but follow up with the USAC because you should hear pretty quickly. You can roll with a provider. I'm going to skip that because of time, and I also don't suggest it. But I did want to stress that there's a lot of consumer protections built into this bill. So you cannot be denied ACP because you have past disconnects and bad credit. The internet company still needs to be able to take you on and apply that benefit for you. There's no early termination fees. If you like your plan and where you're at, you can't be pressured to sort of upsell or downsell you, so you can stay you can apply how you like it. Limitations on disconnection, so they can't terminate you until you are 90 days or late or more late on your payment. And then this ACP benefit is portable, so it goes with you. So if you don't like your service with one provider, you want to move to another one, you have all the rights and powers to do that, and you can switch. And so there's a complaint process through the FCC, which we highly recommend people utilizing so they can see what's happening if you have any issues. Mass Attorney General's office also has a complaint process. And then once you receive your benefits, it should happen pretty automatically, immediately once you enroll. You receive verification that you're eligible and you enroll, you should get that benefit be applied immediately. And then there is now an annual recertification process. USAC has to verify eligibility every year. There's an automated database eligibility checklist. Oh, sorry, there's a little, I think that one is, sorry, I think I messed up that. There's an automated, so if you passed and there's no, USAC will automatically verify your data, your eligibility. If they are able to do that, you don't need to do anything else. You won't hear about it. It's just automatic. If you fail the automated database check and you also failed at the original when you were signing up, you're going to have to fill out an application, ACP certification form. If you didn't pass the automated database checklist and you didn't do it at the original place and you had a signage place and you had to do some additional work, you're going to have to upload some documents. I'm saying if you passed originally but now didn't pass, then you're going to have to upload some documents. So there's 3 steps. One is no action required. They're going to automatically check eligibility for everyone. If they've passed, then you do nothing. The consumer does nothing. If you failed, they're going to ask you to do certification. If you failed, but you originally passed automated database checks, then you're going to have to show your eligibility for those programs. I just wanted to say there's a new White House website on ACP. It's called getinternet.gov. Now every provider, and I know we're going to hear from Comcast, has their own ACP. So I took some pages from, here's Comcast, here's Verizon's, and here is Cox. So you can see that each company has now been sort of rolling out their own ACP information. There's tons of resources available. We're going to share my slides. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to me. I've also created a digital equity email list to keep people in the loop. We are also starting a mass digital equity coalition. So if you want more information about that, please reach out to me. And yeah, thank you. I think I'm happy to answer some questions. This is just a small piece, and we're trying to get, I think about right now, 35% of people who are eligible for ACP in Massachusetts are enrolled, and we'd like to see those numbers higher, 100%. Massachusetts is a really well-connected state, but like as Dan had said, we're not fully connected, and I think it's speaks volumes when a state like ours, shows the need for programs like this and shows sort of the divide exists everywhere. And I think that is really a way to move the needle forward on broader racial justice issues. So I'm going to stop sharing and.
Yeah, thank you so much, Virginia. And I know there was a ton of information, really, really critical information for those of us on the ground that are working with folks that are eligible and can benefit from this. And so the slides will be emailed to all the summit attendants. And so you'll have all of it in your hand shortly after. And it's also a little disheartening to hear that only 35% utilization rate right now. And I just want to reiterate, all of you play a role in increasing that percentage, right? It's like, that should be in your conversations with those that you work with in your communities to say, hey, do you know about the ACP? And train yourself on, familiarize yourself, I should say, on how to sign up, so then you can help those that may be eligible but may not have the information in hand. And so lots and lots of great tips there. Thank you so much, Virginia. I think for now, I'm gonna move over to Becca, actually from Comcast. And I'm not going to crack the jokes about talking to you about my bill, but I'm sure you got lots and lots of those conversations every day. Love to just hear from Comcast, from a provider's perspective. Can you explain how ACP actually works on the ground, and then also what are some of the other benefits that may be available that are very underutilized right now and really should be taken advantage of?
Absolutely. I am going to try to pop up some slides as well, just so that you guys have a visual of really what we offer. And hopefully I get the right window here and you're not looking at the icons on my desktop. I want to go backwards just a little bit. Even before ACP, Comcast has been involved in providing an option for income-constrained households for internet service for a number of years. And I think we've learned a lot through all of that, and we've all talked about partnerships, and really the idea of building trust and partnerships on the ground to be able to communicate programs like this is essential. We had provided a $9.95 option, quite frankly, for 11 years at this point. We're very excited when ACP came out, obviously preceded by EBB, in terms of how we apply that. Now, the affordable connectivity benefit, if you are signed up as a provider, that benefit can be applied to any of a provider's internet services. So you can apply that affordable connectivity benefit to any internet service that Comcast offers. It doesn't matter. However, when we talk about getting to a no-cost option, there are opportunities that all of us, many of us, offer that Virginia outlined. We have a couple underneath a banner referred to as Internet Essentials. So Internet Essentials provides a 50 megabits per second option at $9.95 a month. And that when I get to Xfinity Mobile, that becomes a little bit more important in terms of only using a third of that $30 benefit. And then Internet Essentials Plus is our $100 option at $29.95 a month, obviously getting us to a no-cost opportunity. One of the things that I like to be able to talk about, because we've been doing this for quite some time, having sign-up events, working with partners around affordable connectivity, is the fact that while mobile phones are essential too, and many times the family needs a wireline connection at home. You need to be able to work on a laptop, to do homework, to be able to video conference, all of those things. But they're not willing to not use a mobile connection as well. So what's now an opportunity under ACP, additionally, at least with Xfinity, is the opportunity to put $9.95 of that $30 benefit towards your Internet Essentials and have a free wireline internet option at home for a family, and then put the other $20 towards an Xfinity mobile bill too. So, for families, that can be really revolutionary. Again, getting back to really the process around this are a couple pieces. I love that Virginia talked about getting the affordable connectivity NVID, the National Verifier Identification Number first. working through that process, and then coming to your provider and choosing the service that you want. We can do that with you. We have folks in the field. If you as an organization wanted to do something with your population, our teams are more than willing to go out, sit beside your staff, and help folks walk through both the affordable connectivity application. Some of us are certified to do that through something called a RAD ID, which allows us to help folks with that process. And then walk through connectivity, applying that that benefit to our account. So there are a couple different ways that you can do that. For existing customers, those who already have an internet connection, and ACP is important there too, because it is a benefit that can make other expenses in your life easier by reducing that internet expense, quite frankly. We encourage them to call 855-846-8376. You can dial in 8558 internet if you want, and apply that benefit to an existing account. If folks are new to the internet and they haven't been connected before with Internet Essentials, they can then use the Internet Essentials online application for that $9.95 opportunity. They will have to chat for $29.95 right now. Our systems are consistently evolving, and eventually you'll be able to do everything online. But right now, those are the options and how we can apply those to services. Again, what we are finding is the more partnerships that we can build, the more ways that we can help. The folks that want to utilize this program often need help getting through the application process. It really is often a hands-on process. And it simply takes trust. It takes the ability to be able to sit with someone for a little bit and understand their situation, quite frankly, and help them through that and be able to give them, if not the ability to connect them right away, the confidence and the opportunities to be able to follow up in that space. One of the things that I wanted to note too is we know that the Lifeline Telephony opportunity has been around for quite a while. One of the questions that I often get is, well, I'm already using Lifeline, I can't utilize ACP. That's a both and opportunity. If someone is utilizing Lifeline, I believe it's somewhere near $9.95 a month right now, they can absolutely use the ACP process as well.
That's great. Again, I think this is, I have no idea where you are now. I think for us that are working on the ground, I think very often, someone comes to us and say, I don't have access, what do I do? And those of us on the ground feel like we're adult learners trying to learn very, very new information very quickly. And, what you and Virginia and John and Dana provided today is going to give us the tools that we need to do this. And again, Becca, you will also be able to share your slides so then we all have it. Mm-hmm. And also, please remember, Becca just volunteered her team to come out to your organization and sit with your staff. And they have people that are certified to be able to sit with you and walk you through the process. And so you have the skills to be able to do so. Our goal is to get that utilization rate up from 35% to hopefully 100% of all eligible people in Massachusetts can take advantage of this, because if you remember from Virginia's presentation, there are $14 billion allocated to this for the next 5 years. It is in part of the infrastructure bill, and important to get folks connected and stay connected. Thank you all for all of our panelists. I want to give it a minute to see if anyone has any questions for any of the panelists before we go to our closing. Cynthia has a question in the chat. Becca, can you tell us the name of, it's Comcast. If you can put maybe your contact information in the chat, then folks can have it. That'll be great. Jim, our fearless CEO MNN, asked the question here. In addition to helping more people access ACP, and this I assume to all of the panelists, what do you think are the next big steps to close the digital divide? Great question.
Who's gonna go first? Well, I can mention, I think I mentioned a few things. Once I think is infrastructure. I think the whole places need to be wired and built regardless of sort of your income. There shouldn't be any more redlining. And I think competition, we shouldn't have places where there's only one provider, and we see that a lot in Massachusetts, even though, you know, they could still be great. I think competition is great. So I think those are the first big two, and I'll let Dan and John and Becca talk about other areas.
I think a big one is we need to get as many community organizations that are on the ground as possible to have digital inclusion in what they do. Is like something that we I'm really proud of TechnoZone. I'm a bit biased, but I'm really proud of it. But at the same time, we could scale and scale and scale, and we still wouldn't get to the issue. So I think a big piece of closing the digital divide, aside from dealing with the root causes that we've been talking about, is that, you know, libraries, community centers, homeless shelters, schools, churches, we all need to help those organizations provide digital inclusion training.
Yeah, and I think more and more, and some of this goes back to, and I know everyone is tight on resources, but the fact that one of the things that we didn't talk about, I think Virginia alluded to it, I don't think any of us are technology experts or engineers on the call. Anybody can do this, quite frankly, with a little bit of knowledge and understanding, and it really is about connecting to people. So that those folks who are resource officers, having this in their cycle of knowledge, the things that they share on a regular basis. I think the more that we can integrate that into the regular concept of what offering social services and resources is about, the more we're going to normalize it into those particular offerings of support.
That's great. Thank you. John, you have anything to add?
Well, I think that, you know, the voice that I hear, and I think that it really resonates with me, is when we put together a home, and, you know, we do want to think about just having the accessibility options available. And as Dan said, you know, providing additional opportunities for people to actually learn. To overcome some of the barriers and levels of intimidation that very well may be present with technology. You know, it's interesting. I mean, when you buy an iPhone, you know, it's not like you get a user manual that's like 3 or 4 inches thick, right? And the idea is that it should be intuitively developed or designed so that we can, without too much effort, be able to use at least those fundamentals pretty much instantaneously. I would very much like to see a world where, you know, many of the barriers to entry are as easy to use as an iPhone is for a 5-year-old when they just intuitively pick it up for the first time. I would like to find opportunities for us to overcome a lot of these things, and we got a lot of work still to do. But this conversation is building a little extra optimism into my outlook on that.
That's great. That's where we hope to be able to deliver. And there is a question of, we're going to, just the last question of, does anyone know of any organization that have trained adult education teachers to support individuals with building computer skills using universal learning model specific to adult learners? Ah, there you go. Dan just volunteered himself. Great. That's fantastic. And Dan, your information is in the chat for folks to be able to get in contact with you. That's fantastic. Because again, like I said, I think many of us who are on the ground interacting with folks that can really benefit from this, and then also really need the upskilling. These are really important resources to have. I actually have someone raising their hand, Carolina. And then that will be the last comment that we take today. And then I'm going to hand it over actually to Jim.
So I just want to thank John for your comment about listening to community, because I think that this is also, it's a bigger debate about equity. And for a lot of people, we're just talking about equipment and setting their architecture for everything. You know, when you have 3 jobs and you're trying to support a family, believe me, trying to learn how to operate some kind of or get a benefit is not probably your number one thing. I also wanted to ask about the requirements, Virginia, of the ACP subsidy. It says that for income verification, you're requiring that you're not looking at documentation. So if you're undocumented, you still qualify, but it says later that for income verification, you're supposed to provide a yearly income, I'm assuming a tax return. A lot of the people that are undocumented are working jobs that they're not providing any tax returns, or there's no document that tells how much money they're earning. Is there another way to help them qualify for this program? Because I think, again, that's a huge equity component. And if you want to go from 35% to 100%, I don't think you're going to make it happen with that requirement. Just my 5 cents. Those two, thank you.
Yeah, well, I can mention the second piece that, well, it depends how you want to establish eligibility. So you can show, work stubs if you get it, but if you're getting paid cash, that's going to be difficult, right? And so even if you're undocumented, you can get an ITIN number and still file taxes. So you can do it that way if you're, I know not many people aren't. My expertise is actually in immigration. I was an immigration attorney for a very long time, so I understand that. But you can also qualify through your dependents. So if you have US citizen children who are getting free or reduced school lunch, then you can apply through them, and that might be a better way to qualify, an easier way to establish your eligibility. If you're living in subsidized housing or receiving that type of benefit, even through your children, you would want to do that as well. If you're receiving WIC or some other things, other benefits that are for your children, and you want to apply as because it's anybody in your household. It's not just, so if you have a dependent child who is a US citizen, then you can do it through them.
Virginia, so you might want to consider adding that. And also it's important to let people understand that this is not going to be looked down on when they are trying to organize their citizenship in this country, because that's the other greatest fear that people have for applying for any subsidy.
I do. So if you want me to come to your organization and give a full thing, I can, but I was trying to smash it into 10 minutes, but I definitely do have slides about that. So thank you for asking the question.
That's a great question, and a great clarification. It's anyone within your household, not just the one who typically shows up on the bill as the head of household, right? That's fantastic. Thank you so much for asking that question. And I just want to take a moment to thank the panelists. You all have provided such critical information for those of us on the ground, and also for everyone who were able to be here today. I'm gonna actually hand it over to Jim, who is the CEO of MNN, and to give us some final words.
Chen, thanks. And my closing comments are simple. Another round of thank yous. First, to our MNN team who put this together, Molly, Claire, Jess, a lot of great work. Second, to Chen and Becca, who took leadership roles on this from the start. And third, to all our panelists. If you're like me, this is one of those issues that you think, we should have it done tomorrow. This is really important. We should have it done tomorrow. But when you dig into it, it takes more than that. It takes vision, and it takes creativity, and it takes partnerships, and it takes resources, and it takes drive. And that's what all of you panelists have demonstrated for us today. So we appreciate the work you're doing. We look forward to working with you to help close the digital divide. And thanks to everybody for joining us today.